Hello, I'm your host Jim McClean. Welcome back to another episode of the Bandaflix Movie Review Show. Let's see what movies we'll be talking about tonight. We'll be psychoanalyzing Inside Out 2, which is out in cinemas now. Our pick of the streams this week is Hitman on Netflix. And our Pride season continues with The Watermelon Woman. So that's what we've lined up for you this week. Joining me in the studio this evening here in Belfast is Adam Neeson.
Hi, Jim.
And Doctor Nicole Hamilton.
Hello.
Hello to you both, as always. Packed show, loads to try and get in. So let's forego the formalities and let's kick on with some movie news. So that's a look at Smile 2. The trailer just dropped as we started to record. Nicole, you were literally just coming into the studio and we handed you a phone and said, watch this. So this is the sequel to a bit of a smash when it was released. Low budget horror film. I think we reviewed it on the show. I wasn't a fan. I'm not going to lie. So this was not a movie I was crying out for. I'm very disappointed they haven't called it Smiles. I think that would have been a much cleverer title than Smile 2, but maybe that just says everything we need to know before the film's actually released. But the trailer looks okay, but we know market men and women will sell their soul to make us buy a cinema ticket. Looks bigger, louder, sillier, nastier than the first film. And Nicole, you actually surprised me particularly because you said you liked the first film, possibly for all the reasons I've just mentioned there, for its silliness.
Yeah, I had a good time with it. It's not something that I'm like dying to see again, nor was I really dying for another one either, but I enjoyed it whenever I watched it. I liked the final act a lot. I thought it went in very odd places that I didn't necessarily expect, so I'm excited to see where this one goes and if it'll do a similar kind of thing and surprise me a bit.
Well, we don't know. It hasn't been released yet. The trailer, as I say, it looks promising. I just find the original was a bit schlocky. There was a couple of really silly jump scare moments and it just felt like a sub-Ring knockoff, particularly in kind of how it's trying to resolve itself. Adam, what about you? Were you busting for Smile 2? You excited by the trailer? You were the one that mentioned this to me, so I'm assuming you're a massive fan.
Not a massive fan, but one of the actors in the first one, Kyle Gardner, I love. And unfortunately in the trailer for the second one, we probably see his demise, so he might not be in it for too long. But yeah, this looks fun. Naomi Scott, great actress. And I'm always up for some cheap, dirty horror movie in the cinema, even if it is basically, like you say, a Ring knockoff.
Yeah, well, don't we all like a bit of a dirty horror at the cinema? But before we move on, Nicole, you were particularly irate because the director of this, Parker Finn, he's, at this stage, it's one of those projects that may or may not happen, but he's involved in a remake for another kind of, I don't know if we want to call it a horror movie. We don't know at this stage. It's definitely happening, but I think it's Robert Pattinson is potentially involved. Do you want to tell our viewers the original that you love and why you're a bit wary?
Yeah, so the original is Possession from 1981. That's directed by Andrzej Zulawski. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but it is a like art house horror film that has really taken off the last couple of years because some people on Twitter discovered it and fell in love with it, as they should. But it's a very weird film. It's a very specific vibe that is very specific to that director. I don't think I've ever seen anybody else make films quite like he does. And to put that in the hands of somebody who made quite a generic film like Smile, like as much as I had a good time with it, the two vibes don't necessarily mesh. So I'm not necessarily interested to see how that works out because I don't think I will like it. So we'll see. Who knows?
I'm intrigued by Robert Pattinson's involvement. He is an actor. Let's move aside all the Twilight or the Twiglet stuff, as we like to call it. Let's move that aside. He is an actor who makes interesting choices within his career. So, look, I'm intrigued by it. I mean, the original film is not a film I love, but it's not that I don't like it. It's a really depressing horror movie. Although great central performance by Sam Neill, I have to say. Adam, I know we're going to move on to something completely different that we've all seen. You intrigued by that project?
No, I'd rather see him direct a remake of Repossessed. That would be much better. No, Possession is a movie that is unique, one to its setting and one to its time. And I don't think, unless he has come in with a pitch that it blew away everybody, then maybe it'll be worth it, but I just can't see it happening.
Well, yeah, well, look, we don't know. It could be great, Adam. It could be terrible. We'll have to wait and see. Those are films we haven't seen. I think we'll move on and talk about something that's in cinemas now we have seen.
I'm the worst!
Overreact much?
I barely touched it.
Let the professional handle this.
I'm too gross to go anywhere ever again! Well, that's a preview of the next 10 years.
This June,
I'm Anxiety. I am just such a huge fan of yours. We're Riley's new emotions. Wow!
Remember when we all finally came up to headquarters?
Nostalgia.
That was like 30 seconds ago, nostalgia. Yeah, those were the days.
So that's a clip from Inside Out 2. It was released in cinemas last week. We're only getting a chance to review it now. By all records, I think at the minute it's been possibly the most successful animated movie of all time, breaking box office records. I was very nervous about the sequel. I love the original. This arrives nearly 10 years after that film first hit our screens, and we all felt the need to go and psychoanalyze ourselves. But Adam, I'll come to you first. Are you a fan of this movie? You know, our beloved little Riley, she's getting a bit older, and she's going through puberty, and there's more complex emotions on the scene.
I actually really enjoyed this. I weirdly went into it. Inside Out 1, to me, it has its highs, but it has a lot of moments in it that I just didn't really connect with. But Inside Out 2, weirdly, probably because Riley's more grown up, so the emotions are more grown up, so I felt more, especially like things like anxiety and envy and stuff, I was able to feel a closer attachment to. But I feel like the humour is really on point, the animation is crisp, and they were able to make a sequel out of something that could have easily been just going through the motions, like we talked about in the podcast recently, Cars 2. And that is literally a movie that from left field just took a swipe at something that thought it could entertain the audience with, whereas this kind of presents something to the audience that they didn't know they wanted. But I could see a lot of older people really connecting with the emotions that Riley's going through in this film.
Okay, well, I did love the original. I remember, I'll not go into spoilers, but Bing Bong still holds a special place in my heart. And I cried my little heart out when I saw the film the first time round, fell in love with it, so I was always going to be nervous about this. My general response is, I think it's fine. I needn't have worried. I think there's a lot of great ideas, there's a lot of world building. We have this idea now with Riley that she's building her sense of self and of the person she wants to be, the person she aspires to be, and then how these new complex emotions are fitting into that. I just think, if I'm honest, I think it's perfectly fine. So it's still a 3-star film. I think we kind of have the same trope. We still have the central character of Joy being forced to essentially do the same thing second time around. First time around, she had to go and retrieve core memories. This time she's going to retrieve Riley's sense of self. So there's a repeat there. There's not enough sadness, that's one thing. And I think if I take a step back, the first film has all its kind of its complex ideas. And there is a sense of world building here and expanding on those ideas. But first time round, it was a very clear-cut, simple story. Young girl forced to move to a new city, strange place, losing contact with her friends, and how that makes her feel. So it's pretty straightforward. I think with this idea of Riley now going through puberty, it's much more complex. And I think from a cinematic narrative point of view, it's a little bit more muddled. It's not as clear-cut as the first film, which I think works against it in terms of just as a piece of cinema. But I still admire Pixar have come at this. They haven't just done something for the sake of it. I just think they've bitten off maybe something more than they can chew. And yeah, we'll have to, I think this one very much leaves the option for an Inside Out 3. That has not, I mean, this is what Pixar are doing now. They are doing sequels. They're returning to those wells, and the box office success seems to have proven a hit. So I think it's fine. 3 stars. Nicole, what about you?
I'm a wee bit more positive on it than you are. I, like you, really enjoyed the humour, and I thought it was just a really entertaining film. Like, I kind of didn't notice the runtime disappearing in front of me. And I noticed actually in the cinema, I was surrounded by children and their parents, and there were parents laughing at moments, like specifically whenever we go into the parents' minds and we see their emotions. So I think older people definitely are going to be able to relate to this and get a kick out of it that they might not have gotten out of the first film. But it's lacking for me a little bit in terms of complexity with that narrative as well, and even with the emotions specifically, because I feel like these are not things that just pop up whenever you hit puberty. Like, I know there's, to not go into too many spoilery details, there is a literal puberty button, and as much as that is how that can feel sometimes, you don't just wake up and suddenly everything is different. It's a more gradual process than that, and I feel like introducing all of these new emotions the way that they did kind of simplified that experience a little bit. And because you can have anxiety before you turn 13, like, it's not just as clear cut as that. So I wish that there had been a little bit more exploration of those complexities, and I think there was room in the film to do that, but they just didn't take that opportunity. So I almost don't want another one. I'm happy. I would still go and see another one if it happened, but I'm happy with just the first one, to be honest.
I was happy with just Inside Out, and I think now, for me anyway, I guess the box office success means that there will be not a need, potentially a need, but a desire to go back and return to that well. We've seen that now with Toy Story. We had the perfect cinematic trilogy. Then we had a pretty solid 4th entry. We're going to get a 5th installment by all means. So yeah, I think an Inside Out 3 is probably inevitable. I don't want to sound like I'm being down on it. I just think in terms of the 2 films, I think Inside Out is much clearer in what it's trying to do. I think Inside Out just tries too much. And I think for me anyway, the central message, if the first film was about parents saying, look, you cannot protect your children from sadness, it is an important development tool, that's a great message. I think in this one, the message ultimately, for all its talk about kind of dealing with anxiety, it's the sense that you can't forget joy. As you get older, there was a line, I mean, we're talking about, you know, emotional heft and emotional beats in the movie. There is one sequence where even I, well, I'm going to say even I, stony-faced me, but I cry at the drop of a hat. There's a sequence in that where even it got a little dusty for me in this screen. Not so much as the first one, where it talks about what is this getting older? Do you just lose joy in your life? And yeah, I think that's the message for me in this film, is that you don't lose the joy as you get older. I try, Adam. I try not to lose the joy. I try to take the enjoyment and pleasure from each week when I come down to do the show. But you seem to, I know we're going to move on, you seem to have enjoyed this installment more than its predecessor.
Yeah, the first one for me just, I don't know, felt a bit basic in its, you know, breaking down of emotions into just these specific 5 things. So I think the extension of the cast really helped me enjoy this more. Also helps for more comedy beats. I know that Bill Hader didn't return to voice Fear, but I think that Tony Hale that replaced him is the embodiment of fear, if you've ever seen Arrested Development. So I laughed a lot at his bits, and anger is still hilarious to me, and all of the new emotions were great too. There were great additions. There wasn't one that stood out that I was like, oh, why are they here? They all made me laugh separately.
Okay, well, as I say, you two much more positive about it than me, and I keep making the point, I don't want to sound like I do not like Inside Out 2. It's perfectly fine. Maybe I just went in with too high expectations, and maybe I need to go and add to its box office success and go see it again. And who knows, maybe in a couple of weeks when we talk about the film, or maybe at the end of the year, I'll be talking and waxing lyrical about it. So that's in cinemas now. I think we'll move on from the big screen to what's available to stream.
My name is Gary Johnson, and I'm a fake hitman. Every sting operation was a performance.
This is serious. I am in service business.
And each arrest was like a standing ovation.
Okay, Daniel Day.
I had it down to a science.
Sounds lovely.
Until things got, well,
Ron.
complicated.
Madison.
So this is the latest film by Richard Linklater, Hitman, starring Glenn Powell, inspired by an article that he read in the Austin Chronicle. Massive fan. I'm a massive fan of Richard Linklater. Just has a very eclectic back catalogue. He's a director who can go from genre to genre. Here we have a romantic comedy with a bit of a black comedic twist. Nicole, what do you think?
This film really surprised me. I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm not an action comedy person, because that makes me sound miserable, but it's not the sort of film that I generally gravitate towards. And I like Glenn Powell, but I haven't been like really, really blown away by him at all. So I clicked play, didn't have super high expectations, and I actually had a really, really good time. I laughed a lot. It was not deeper exactly than I was expecting, but it had more of a message behind it, and there are scenes where Glenn Powell's character is teaching his class that I found like quite poignant in some ways, and just like really narratively tied everything in well together, and the different like personalities that he takes on throughout this were really fun, the different accents. I came out of it a much bigger Glenn Powell fan than I went in. So I'm quite excited to see what he does next, and I just really enjoyed it.
Well, you'll be really excited to know the next film we're going to see him on the big screen anyway. It's going to be Twisters. So we've got that to look forward to, Nicole. It's quite a good TV show this week, because I think maybe we're going to disagree. Usually it's all we love or we all hate. Again, I think this was fine. I maybe went in a bit like Inside Out 2, maybe with too high expectations. Massive Glenn Powell fan. Just seems to have kind of, in the last few years, just really kind of become centre stage. I wait for his inevitable casting. If it hasn't already happened, I'm sure Adam will correct me, in an MCU or a DC title. It's probably going to happen at some point soon. He's got the charisma for that kind of role. And the film's all about him. He makes this film work. All the things you've mentioned about his kind of various personas that he adopts, the kind of this idea, this complex idea of going through it about identity, and do we really gonna get to know him? All these different structures going on. I just found it though a little bit meh. And I know that's not gonna get stuck on the poster anytime soon. Hitman, Richard Linklater, Jim McClean, it's a bit meh. I know that's not gonna be going there. I just find it kind of, it had its charming moments, but it just didn't win me over. Ultimately, I thought it's a little bit bloated. You could probably cut a little bit of its runtime, but that's a lot of, you could say a lot about these big directors that I love, the likes of Scorsese and the likes of Linklater, etc. Just to name a few that have instantly come to my head, that are now working with streamers, given a bit more freedom, where I sense maybe theatrically, if it's being released in the cinema, you might find editors saying like this needs to be cut more, it needs to be shorter. I thought it was fine. Adam, what about you?
I love Richard Linklater. He's one of my favourite directors, so anytime he ever brings out a movie, it's always of interest to me, especially bringing back Glenn Powell, who he worked with in Everybody Wants Some. Unfortunately, Hitman, for me, didn't really win me over. I called it a penny drop movie. Because you're just sitting there waiting for the penny to drop with the other character to be like, well, why didn't you tell me you're not actually a hitman? And movies like that kind of annoy me because as the viewer, if you're waiting for the penny to drop as such, you kind of want some sort of build-up or anything happening, whereas in this, it's really just them two having romantic scenes together, which is completely fine, obviously, but when there's a built-in tension of something that might happen and not going for that tension, it kind of was a letdown for me. Glenn Powell, fantastic performance as all of these characters that he plays, and it's fun to see, you know, Richard Linklater took Bernie, another film with Jack Black, which is also based on a true story, quote unquote. He kind of took that approach to this, where it is kind of a dark subject matter, and lightened it up, even to the point of, at the end of Hitman, there's a character that dies, and then in the credits it's like, he didn't actually die, we just did that for fun. So it, like yourself, Jim, it's sort of meh. I was kind of hoping for more, but you can't say that Glenn Powell isn't fantastic at it.
No, as I said, I mean, he's the best thing about this, and you've pipped me to the post, because Bernie would be the film I would use as a reference to see Richard Linklater doing this kind of dark humour more successfully or more effectively than here. It's, again, I come back to copy, paste, copy, rinse, repeat. What I said before with Insider, it's perfectly fine. I don't think you'll feel like you've wasted, I think it's about 2 hours. I think you will watch worse films this year. You will watch better films this year. But I know some people have really enjoyed it. I'm just not one of them. Nicole, I think of the three of us, you're probably the most positive.
Yeah, which actually surprised me, because I kind of thought that you two would maybe enjoy it more. I don't know. I get your criticisms, because my main issue with it was the runtime. I would have shaved at least 20 minutes off of it, because the back half of it, it just kind of fizzles out a little bit and doesn't really go where you assume the natural trajectory of that story would go. But I still had a good enough time with it, and I think my takeaway from it is give Glenn Powell whatever he wants, pretty much. So, yeah.
Okay, well, look, Glenn, if you're watching, you can have whatever you want. Nicole says it's good. Nicole says it's fine. Don't worry about it. But we'll have to wait what that is. As we do, while we wait, we're going to continue our Pride season. Last week, we had Hamish Calvert talking about Fire Island, which is available on Disney+. This week, we thought we'd change it up a little bit. Nicole, since we had you in the studio, we thought we'd get you to pick this week's title. So what have you picked for us for our Pride season, and why?
Yeah, so the film I picked is The Watermelon Woman from 1996. It is by a black lesbian director called Cheryl Dunye. It's actually the first studio film by a black lesbian director. And the reason that I picked it is because I was going back and forth on a couple of different films. I was thinking maybe Bound or The Handmaiden, which are some of my favourite films. But I settled on this because I think it's a little bit underseen and a bit underappreciated, actually. It brings a unique perspective to the table that I don't think that we get very often, even in modern cinema. The film is about a black lesbian filmmaker who decides that she wants to make a documentary about a black actress that she discovers from the 1940s, who is only listed as the Watermelon Woman. And this character is in quite a few different films, but only listed as that. And the kind of mystery surrounding this character, who was so pivotal, but didn't really get any credit, is what drives her. And it allows her to uncover a sense of community and history that she didn't even know was there. And I think it really highlights the importance of representation really well.
Okay, well, I think on that note, you've set the scene perfectly. Let's have a look at the movie.
Oh, yes, Missy Barbara, I know he is. I prayed to God all night long, and this morning, his little angel told me that he was coming back to you.
Her name, the Watermelon Woman. That's right, Watermelon Woman. Is Watermelon Woman her first name, her last name, or is it her whole name? I don't know, but girlfriend has it going on, and I think I've figured out what my project's gonna be on. I'm gonna make a movie about her. I'm gonna find out what her real name is, who she was and is, everything I can find out about her.
So that's a look at Watermelon Woman, and I have to hold my hand up. I hadn't seen this film, wasn't familiar with it, so great choice in that front. Sat and watched it, didn't really know what to expect. It's an intriguing movie, I have to say, right from the get-go. All the things you've kind of mentioned in your introduction, in the sense that it's both looking back and this faux documentary, because the film that they're talking about isn't actually real. It's because I think if I was reading somewhere, they couldn't afford the rights, the materials to get actual films, so they just made up a black actress and made up these archive footage of these movies. But it is a real subject matter, and part of me is the sense of going, would I rather watch a documentary dealing with that in a real life scenario? Would I find that more interesting? Is there a documentary there still to be told? But then on top of that, you get pretty much a rom-com in that sense, in the mold of what we'd kind of see, potentially less shouty than I suppose than like Spike Lee would maybe do. He's done similar subject matter in the past. And also, I don't know about you, Adam, because I know you and I are both fans. It reminded me a lot, I guess, when you have a video store setting, it reminded me a bit of Kevin Smith at the height of his powers. So I have to say, really enjoyed it. Hadn't heard about it before, so great choice in that front, Nicole. Well done. Star points there. Adam, but are you going to rain on the parade? What was your thoughts?
No, I loved it, and I'm really glad you suggested it, Nicole, because being a filmmaker myself, it's always good to see, you know, voices in the filmmaking industry that I, you know, can't experience myself. And with The Watermelon Woman, it's, you know, like you say, it's Kevin Smith, it's Spike Lee. It's actually, you know, like Richard Linklater's Slacker. You know, it's like day in the life sort of thing. And to be able to, you know, even though the movie's not real, you know that this sort of history did happen. And for this to be able to be represented on the big screen and for it to be the first movie by a black lesbian filmmaker, it's fantastic. And it's one of those movies too that it was on for OD or all four, and it's a movie you could easily skip by, but if you don't know what it's about. But I would recommend it to a lot of young filmmakers, because it is sort of like you feel her struggles trying to get this made and trying to to show it to people, and I think it will be inspirational to a lot of people.
As a filmmaker, that construct of she's playing herself, or a form of herself, I guess, for the front of the camera, and she's dealing with fake movies, fake archive footage, but dealing with real subject matter. How do you think that worked?
I think it works really well. There's definitely a way that it could have came off as tacky. But thankfully, herself is actually a really good actress. I think that maybe she took a lot of inspiration from like Woody Allen when it comes to like playing yourself on film. You know, it's an extension of yourself, but not too big and not too broad. And everything in the video store, you know, that probably came from real life as well. All of the weird conversations and the rivalry she kind of has with the manager, being always on her back. But yeah, it's a really surprisingly funny film, and I can't wait to watch more of her movies.
Yeah, Nicole, I know you said a lot in your introduction. Just anything else you want to add about the film, kind of versus? So we've both been really positive about your choice. So anything you want to add at this stage?
I'm really happy that you both liked it a lot. I rewatched it, obviously for this, and it's not that I was nervous about how it would come across, but I don't know very many people that have seen it, and I haven't had very many conversations about it, which is partially why I chose it, because I feel like it really deserves to be discussed more. But I'm really happy that you both liked it a lot, because I just think that it's a really fantastic film.
Yeah, great choice. I really liked it. As I say, it's always great to hear and see new voices emerge. I know it's from '96, as you've mentioned, but that's at heart the whole thrust of this film, is that it's someone wanting to tell their story and look back at history. So yeah, great choice. And that's the penultimate film within this series before we move into July with a series of specials. Next week we'll have somebody else picking another title, but that's for next week's show. For now, we're going to wrap up here in Belfast, so all that's left for me to do is thank my two guests. So thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks very much, Nicole.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for watching at home. We'll be back next week with another episode, but for now, until then, goodbye.